is in Miami Beach right now, and you probably heard him say not only is the wind hitting me and the rain is pelting me, but the sand is picking up and that's hitting him as well. So they're really starting to feel the first bands of this. But we know that it's hit Cuba. We know that it's been hit hard. There are people, though, Chad, I wanted to ask you, that are up in Florida. They weren't expecting it to be as bad on the West Coast as it is. How long, as they start to feel these first effects and say they are sitting in a shelter or they're sitting in their home and they're thinking, how long is this going to last? Can you give them any indication of that?
Well, from eye wall to eye wall, I would say that's 2 hours at this speed. From when you first get the worst of it, when you get the 130 going from the east, compared to the eye and it gets calm, to the 130 going from the west, which is the backside of the eye, would be a 2-hour period. You cannot go outside during that period to even check on anything, because the wind will eventually pick up and blow everything that it's already displaced and blow it back on you. So this is a 2-hour process from eye wall to eye wall. But from where we are now to when Miami finally feels less than 50, might be 36 hours.
Wow.
I mean, it's going to blow a long time. This thing's only doing 10 miles an hour now, 12 miles an hour.
And that's part of why it's hitting on Sunday. It's not even getting out of the state of Florida until Tuesday? Is that right? Or late Monday?
That's about how long it would take you 2 days ago to drive out of the state. Because I have a friend who lives in Grassy Key, and his regular home is in Michigan. It took him 20 hours to evacuate from the Middle Keys to Georgia. 20 hours just to get across Florida because of the traffic jams and the lack of gas that they had. They had to wait for tankers to come in to put gas in the gas stations so they could fill up and keep going. That's what that was like to evacuate.
So let's talk about the shift that you've seen in the last several hours. It obviously shifted more to the west than was expected initially. Because of that, any more shifting do you suspect? Or once it turns, you have a pretty good indication, you feel pretty solid about where it's going?
Once it turns. It hasn't turned yet. And we talked about this 5 days ago. This was going to be the storm that we wait for the turn and wait for the turn. When does it go? Is it a wobble or is it a turn? And it hasn't turned yet. So yes, absolutely. This could completely miss Key West altogether and then make a run into Tampa. There's no question. Or even like a Charlie that ran into Punta Gorda. Anderson Cooper and I were there, 13 years ago. Place was destroyed by a Category 4 hurricane, and that's what this would be if it does, in fact, make landfall on the West Coast. It is forecast right now to still go through the lower Keys, not quite to Key West, and then on up to Naples, on up into Cape Coral with a Category 4 wind of 140 miles per hour. Now, a lot of those homes were built in the 70s. Some of them are timeshares. They're wooden structures that are not going to hold up in 130 mile per hour wind. They were not built after 1992 when all of a sudden Florida had a brand new code. You should know when your home is built, and if it's not built strongly, you need to get into a shelter here, because this is the most dangerous place in Florida right now. This is the most dangerous place to be in Florida, other than Key West, and we already know that entire island may get overwashed with water.
Which makes it so hard for the people of Florida, because they were expecting an East Coast storm.
Yes.
I know people that left from the East Coast, went to the West Coast, thinking that they were going to be safe, and now are making their way back to the East Coast before this thing hits. But you brought up a very good point that I think needs to be mentioned again, and that is the Everglades. Talk to us about your concern there. Well,
the Everglades are not land. Okay,
right.
So people say, oh, it's going to hit the Everglades, it'll start to slow down. The Everglades are water, and warm water, warmer than the Florida Keys water. And if you push 12 feet of water into the Everglades and you fill up the Everglades with water, the backside of Miami isn't 12 feet high. The levees and the ditches that are on the west side of Miami proper, Miami-Dade proper, that is what I believe will flood the wrong direction. It will flood from west to east until you get to 12 feet high, which obviously there are many areas in Miami that are greater than 12 feet above sea level, but that is a real concern for me. Flooding salt water the wrong direction. You expect the water to come from the east.
Right.
You never expect it to come from the west. In Katrina, we expected it to flood New Orleans from the Mississippi River. We never expected it to flood from Lake Pontchartrain, and that's what happened.
And that's what happened. So when you're looking at what's going on in Cuba right now, does that give you any indication as to what is in store for Florida based on the models and what they're projecting at this moment?
Just take a look in this last picture right here. Our Patrick Ottman, right there. He is right in the eye of this storm. Yeah. But the eye is just beginning to lose contact with Cuba. When that happens, the storm will re-strengthen. The storm died overnight because, or a little bit, because it did hit these Cuban Keys that he was talking about, and that took a little stuffing out. Plus, there's a mountain chain right through here that brought in some dry air to the storm. Now that the storm is offshore, now the storm is going to re-strengthen. And I still think a high Cat 4 to maybe a Cat 5 right into the lower Keys, maybe the dry Tortugas if Key West gets cleared altogether.
All right, Chad is sticking with us, obviously, to make sure that we understand where this thing's going, what it's going. And I know that we have an update coming, I think, from the National Hurricane Center.
We do
don't
in 24 minutes. Yeah, 26
in about 24 minutes. We'll bring that to you as well. We're going to take you back to Cuba.